Well, welcome to Module 2, where we're going to get into the heart and the real meat of this particular set of modules or submodules. And we'll be talking about the research support for direct consultation models and share some of the direct consultation models that are most effective. There are two general topics that we're going to be focusing on, and that's collaboration and research-based direct consultation models. Now, we all have an idea, our own idea of what collaboration is, but we're going to find some common ground here in research on what is collaboration. And collaboration is a mutually beneficial and well-defined relationship that two or more stakeholders come together to achieve common goals. Now again, that's a broad interpretation of collaboration. But each person in the group is interdependent upon the expertise of other group members in formulating and executing the problem-solving plan. And this particular bullet, I think we should be spending a moment on in terms of reflecting on those times when we do feel that we're not being respected, not being part of that process. So this might be the point where, for you, collaboration oftentimes breaks down and therefore is not true collaboration. Now, anytime a group comes together, either formally or informally, a leader emerges. And for our discussion purposes, we're going to be talking about that person in any kind of team effort in a school that takes the lead. And that can be the counselor, either the guidance counselor or somebody coming in, an independent counselor that is brought in as a consultant, the school psychologists, or the principal. And these individuals help stakeholders recognize the benefits of developing the relationships with others on the team, fosters that type of mutual respect and interdependence. And through collaboration, stakeholders gain a clear understanding of what others can contribute. And we're not personalizing it. We're not ingratiating ourselves or glorifying team members. We are focusing on their contributions, not their personalities. And we want this effort to, if it's done effectively, will improve the achievement of students. Now, when we look at the features of a collaborative style of interaction, before we get into the models, what are the features? We want to come to the table voluntarily. Now, a lot of times we volunteer for things that we feel that we are expected to volunteer for. But voluntary attendance or participation is richer. It's parity. Collaboration respects that everyone at the table has an equal voice, that the leader isn't the voice, the leader is the facilitator. And we want to share responsibility for decision making, not saying or agreeing with what we think will ingratiate us to the principal or make us look better or hide our insecurities. And it's based on mutual goals and a shared accountability for outcomes. It's not going to fall on the shoulders of the teacher if this plan doesn't work. It's everyone's responsibility so that everyone's doing their part. And everyone here is committed. Committed to the goals, not committed to the people, committed to the goals of the group. And all participants must agree on what the team is to accomplish. Not agree that Johnny is a poor student or agree that Johnny is not salvageable. I mean, you come into that will break down collaboration immediately. We need to have faith into what we are coming here to put together is going to be effective. And we want to have complete buy-in by all the stakeholders. And we want everyone to share their resources. And one thing we want to be cautious of, and carefully I've chose the word dictating how the resources are to be used, giving suggestions, giving outlines, offering strategies in the spirit of respect and collaboration. Because again, as you've learned about leadership styles, there's authoritarian and there's authoritative. And we're looking at this kind of thing here where we don't want dictating. We want things to be soft in what we offer so that people can massage it using their expertise. So let's talk about the models that work effectively once we have this collaborative spirit established. School stakeholders can assist students more by working directly with the individuals who have frequent contact with students. And this is why it's more effective to work closely, come together, and to facilitate one of these models for effective collaboration. We have the triadic dependent, the collaborative dependent, and the collaborative interdependent. We're going to be looking at these three models and distinguishing the type of interaction that occurs between the stakeholders during the collaboration time, which then will dictate the kind of model that is being processed or used. The triadic dependent. This is a model, and again, I'm thinking that most of you have been in and experienced all three models, but did not identify it. And an effective communicator, an effective leader, will communicate what model they're using so that no one feels offended or feels that somebody is taking over. Because once we know there is a research model that is being used in this process, we can all feel a little more comfortable in what the expectation for our role is, as well as develop respect for that person who's taking a leadership role. And in this model, the consultant, usually a school counselor or psychologist, is the dominant provider. And there are three approaches. There's an indirect, a direct, or a mixed approach. In the indirect approach, the consultant, the psychologist, the counselor provides direct service to the student, indirect service, to the student through the other members of the team. So in the indirect approach, the consultant will be working with the teacher, providing support, problem solving, working indirectly and affecting change through other persons. And that doesn't mean that the people with whom the consultant or psychologist is working with are not actively collaborating and giving input and having effective communication. It simply means that we respect that the consultant, school counselor, psychologist has that 360 view, whereas teachers, because we're intimately involved, have a 180 view. The direct approach is when the consultant is going to work directly with the student. So the student may leave the classroom or before school, after school, meet with this particular dominant provider. And then the teacher or the school stakeholders will be recipients of information pertinent based on the direct work of the consultant or school counselor or psychologist. And then oftentimes you'll see a mixed approach. This is where the individual facilitating the process will work directly with the student and then indirectly through the teacher, through providing information structure. The provider may even come and observe within the environment of the classroom and offer suggestions, or may participate and do group lessons that will help achieve the goal. Now, in this triadic dependent consultation model, focuses on the student's behavior, not the student. We don't let extraneous opinions, extraneous information enter into working with the target behaviors for the student. And we're not only thinking about behaviors that are not academic, these also can be academic behaviors. Behaviors encompass both academic and non-academic behavior of the student. So we are looking at the student's academic achievement. We divorce that from the student's non-academic behavior. But we may see some interdependence there. But when we're looking at the behavior, we look at it in isolation before bringing in any other types of influences on the student's academics. Classroom observations are used to collect the additional information. So we have the data, we have the raw data of the grades. We carefully look at those, look at the skills that contribute to those grades from an academic base, the student's academic skills. But then we want to see what type of extraneous types of factors there are. And those are best observed through classroom observations. And the most effective person to do that is the teacher, because she has a very comprehensive view on a day-to-day basis of the behaviors that are taking place and affecting the learning process. And within this triadic dependent consultation model, there's a working relationship that develops, particularly when you have a teacher entertains people in her classroom. There's a different relationship. There's a mutual respect for what both of those individuals, the teacher, the consultant, bring into the classroom. And the team is provided resources that can help members better understand the issues and interventions. So, for example, the teacher shares a day-to-day observations, the anecdotal notes that he or she keeps, talking about running records that we keep on behavior on a day-to-day basis, and helping the team sort that information and analyze whether there are patterns that have emerged in the student's behavior. And contacts with the student and team involved with the issue is documented. So, like I said, somewhat like a running record, the principal should be keeping notes of each time that the student is sent to the office from the lunchroom or the playground. Why was the student sent? What transpired during the interaction between the principal and the student? So all this is data that needs to be documented and shared with the team. Now let's take a pause and look at how we can apply this model in your school, in your situation, by examining some of the pros and cons and practice some of those skills that we just talked about looking at an issue and making some deductions perhaps about how this model may or may not be effective for the situations you're encountering. All right, now let's talk about collaborative dependent model. And the team continues in this model to depend on the consultant's problem-solving expertise, knowledge of typical and atypical development, and skills for affecting student and systematic change. As I used the term earlier, the teacher has a 180 view, a very effective and very deep 180 view of the student, of the school environment in which the student must function, has probably more knowledge about the day-to-day operations of the family than the rest of the team. But when you look at a consultant who comes in with a clean slate, they're bringing in some expertise from their field that will help construct new or novel methods or approaches to the situation, and maybe a different lens. And the skills for affecting student and systemic change are really very, very specific skills that are developed by people who consult or those in the capacity of the school psychologist. And the other lens that that person can look at is perhaps there is a pattern here within the school that requires a systemic change. The consultant leads the team in establishing the goals and objective for the student and how these changes are going to be realized through an intervention plan. However, the student's teacher is most often responsible for the generalization and implementation of this intervention plan. So even if there's some direct consultative work going on with the student, with the psychologist, the proof is in whether that student can come in and generalize those behaviors. So you as the teacher will probably take the suggestions and own them, will take and mold them into an effective set of strategies within your classroom, of which you are the expert, and have hopefully what is modeled in the direct sessions with the student in an environment in a generalized fashion. Now, research recommends a collaborative dependent consultation relationship for when a specific student has needs, and this becomes otherwise known as a student-focused consultation, or a school system with process or implementation needs. As I said earlier, one of the byproducts of the consultation group coming together, a team coming together, is that principal or psychologist who is external to your classroom can see the patterns of behaviors within the school that may require a systemic change. Now we're going to take pause, stop the recording, and look at this triadic dependent approach that we had looked at earlier, and see how this new approach might be more effective than that triadic dependent approach. And do that by citing specific examples for your situation. Now we're going to talk about the collaborative interdependent model. The previous two models are helpful when we're seeking change for an individual student or a single system within the school. When the problems are more complex, the collaborative independent model is most useful. Here, family members, educators, counselors, students, and members of the broader community may be invited to contribute as equal participants. And this model doesn't presume that any single person has sufficient knowledge to understand the problem and develop an implementation solution. Now, this sharing and transferring of knowledge and information among all the stakeholders and problem solvers enables the determination and implementation of a very comprehensive plan. All right, now, looking at Module 2, there is an extension exercise that would be most helpful to you. And there is a YouTube video that takes approximately 15 minutes called Cultivating Collaboration. Don't Be So Defensive. It's by Jim Tam. And one of the pitfalls when you watch it is that you can identify members of a team or members maybe even in your own family that when you come together have these behaviors or these defensive qualities. What I'm asking you to do is own it. Own the message. Look at this through the lens of yourself and see how you can benefit from this video of understanding behaviors. And when you do that, you will be able to identify what keeps you in the red zone, and you'll have an understanding of what the red zone is when you watch the YouTube video. I've offered another resource here to deepen your understanding of these consultation model definitions if you're so inclined to continue your venture into understanding them. And I will let you move on to Module 3.